It's strange how the smallest moments can shift everything in your life. It wasn't the shouting, the fighting, or the obvious signs that did it for me. It wasn't even the moments where I could have just walked away. No, it was something much quieter, something that made me question every piece of the life I had built. It was just another Thursday evening. I had just wrapped up a long day of work, and I thought I was done for the night. Dinner was on the stove, the TV was on in the background, and Emma, my wife, was at her weekly book club. She had been doing that for years. She always told me it was her way of getting some me time, and I was fine with it. It was always the same routine, nothing to worry about. But tonight felt different. The apartment was too quiet. There was an odd weight to the air, something that hung just a little too thick for comfort. As I waited for her to return, I found myself staring at the clock. 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. Where was she? I tried texting her a few times, but no response. Not like Emma. She was always quick to reply, even when she was busy. But tonight, nothing. It was starting to eat at me, the silence. It made me restless, made me feel like something was off. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she was out grabbing coffee with one of the girls from her club. Maybe she had decided to stay late and catch up. But it had been an hour past when the book club usually ended. Then, around 9:15, I heard the front door open. "Hey," she said casually, walking in, her coat draped over her arm. She had that look about her, the one that made everything feel like it was perfectly normal. A smile, soft and calm, but something in her eyes was different, something I couldn't place. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to sound casual but failing. It had been on my mind too long. "Just hanging out, catching up with Claire," she replied, taking off her shoes and setting her bag on the couch. Claire. Of course. Claire was her best friend. But I couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't responded to any of my texts. I wasn't sure why, but it nagged at me, gnawing at the back of my mind. She saw the look on my face. "I'm sorry. We were talking about some stuff. Time just got away from me," she said, walking toward the kitchen. I watched her as she moved through the apartment. She was always so graceful, so put together. But tonight, there was a subtle difference. Her movements felt too calculated, like she was trying to keep everything under control. "Everything okay?" I asked, still feeling that strange tension in the room. "Yeah, just a bit of a long night. I'm fine." Her voice didn't carry the same warmth it usually did. Something was missing. It was as though the words weren't quite reaching me. There was no depth, no connection. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something about her was off. I tried to shake it off, brushing it aside. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband who read too much into everything. But the feeling didn't go away. It only grew stronger. She sat down at the kitchen table, her eyes on her phone. I watched her for a moment, wondering if I had imagined the tension earlier. Maybe I was just tired, maybe it was nothing. But then I heard it. A ping. A text message. Her phone screen lit up. It was just a glimpse. A flash of the notification as it briefly appeared on the screen, but my heart skipped when I saw it. It wasn't from Claire. It was from someone named TJ. I froze. It was a name I didn't recognize. Not from anyone she had ever mentioned before. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself it was just a colleague or someone she met through work. But a knot had already started to form in my stomach. Why had she not told me about this person? Why was she getting text messages so late at night? I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. "Who's TJ?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up, momentarily startled. Her eyes widened before she quickly glanced down at her phone, then back at me. "Oh, just a guy from work," she replied with a casual shrug. No big deal. But her tone didn't match the words. It wasn't just a guy from work. There was something in the way she said it, too quickly, too defensively, that made me feel like I was missing something. Something important. I didn't know it yet, but in that moment, the door to the truth had been cracked open. I had no idea what I was about to walk into, but I could feel the edges of the lies creeping in, pulling me closer to a revelation that would shake everything I thought I knew about my marriage. But that was still to come, and I had no idea how far down the rabbit hole I was about to fall. The next few days were a blur. The conversation about the mysterious TJ left me unsettled, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a colleague, like she said. But that text message kept playing in my head like an echo in the background of everything I did. I noticed the little things. The way Olivia would be on her phone more often than usual. The way she'd smile whenever she received a text, but then quickly hide her phone when I walked into the room. It wasn't a big deal, right? I tried telling myself that. I didn't want to become the kind of guy who questioned every move his wife made. But the feeling of unease kept gnawing at me, and I couldn't shake it. The silence between us was growing. I didn't know if she could feel it too, but I sure did. It wasn't the kind of silence that came with comfort or closeness. It was a kind of tension, like we were both avoiding saying what we knew was going on, but neither of us wanted to confront. I could tell she was distracted. I'd ask her questions, and she'd give me short answers, just enough to keep the conversation going without actually engaging with me. The breaking point came that weekend. We had planned to go out for dinner. It was supposed to be a special night, just the two of us, like old times. We hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk properly in weeks. I even managed to get a reservation at one of those fancy places she always loved. But when the time came, I noticed that Olivia didn't seem like herself. She was still in her robe at 6:30 p.m., long after I had gotten ready. "Are we still going?" I asked, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her absent-mindedly scroll through her phone. Yeah. Just give me a minute," she replied without looking up. Minutes turned into an hour, and I was starting to feel that creeping frustration again. It wasn't like her to be this careless about plans. I walked into the living room, the clinking of my shoes on the hardwood floor loud in the otherwise quiet apartment. "Olivia," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "What's going on? We're going to be late." She finally put her phone down and turned to face me. "I don't know, I'm not feeling it tonight." Her voice was flat. It wasn't the excuse I was expecting. Olivia was usually the first to jump at any chance to get out of the house and enjoy a night together, but not this time. She didn't look at me when she spoke, didn't even seem to care that I was standing there, hoping for a different response. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice quieter now, the worry creeping in again. She sighed deeply, rubbing her eyes as though the weight of the day had finally caught up with her. "I'm just tired. Work's been a lot. I'm sorry." It felt like she was just pushing me away. There was no spark in her eyes, no warmth in her voice. She wasn't even trying. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman I had promised to spend my life with. "All right," I said, trying to swallow my frustration. "If you're not up for it, that's fine. But can we at least talk?" She didn't answer me. Instead, she stood up abruptly, grabbed her phone, and walked into the bedroom. That was it. I didn't follow her. I didn't try to push. But something inside me broke. It wasn't just about the dinner. It was about the distance between us, the growing silence that seemed to grow thicker each day. It wasn't just her avoiding me. It was the way she didn't even care anymore. I stood there in the living room, staring at the untouched dinner table, feeling like a fool. I wanted to reach out, to ask her what was really going on, but I was afraid of the answer. I didn't know what I would do if she admitted it, if she told me the truth. Was I ready to hear it? The next morning, Olivia woke up with a forced smile, like nothing had happened. She apologized for being distant, but it felt empty, like she was saying the words just to get them out, not because she meant them. "Can we just have breakfast together?" I asked, trying to hold on to some semblance of normalcy. But even then, she seemed distracted. Her phone was buzzing again, and every time it did, I saw her glance at it, her face tightening just for a second before she hit it again. I tried not to look, but I couldn't help it. The messages, the strange energy around her, it all pointed to something I didn't want to face. The tipping point came when I decided to check her phone. I know. It was a huge mistake. But my gut told me there was something I was missing. There was something she wasn't telling me. And that night, I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. I grabbed her phone while she was in the bathroom, her message notifications lighting up like a beacon. The first text I saw was from TJ, just like before, but this time, there were more messages. Short, cryptic texts. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll be thinking about you." I felt my heart stop. The weight of the words hit me harder than I expected. But there was one text that made everything clear. "I'll make sure he's out of the picture soon. You're mine now." That was it. That was the moment everything clicked. The moment the truth hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. My wife was having an affair, and not only that, she had been planning it for longer than I had known. And the worst part? She didn't even care to hide it anymore. I put the phone back on the counter, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream, to confront her right there. But I didn't. I stood frozen in place, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. And when she came back into the room, smiling like everything was fine, I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The air felt thick the moment Olivia walked back into the room. She didn't notice the tension. She didn't feel the weight of it pressing down on us both. I was frozen, standing there, trying to collect my thoughts, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. I hadn't expected to find what I did. I never thought I would be the one holding the pieces of her betrayal in my hands. Yet here I was. She came in, oblivious, talking about how her sister had called her earlier to discuss a family gathering. Her voice was light, carefree, like the storm inside me hadn't just broken, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. She didn't look at me the same way anymore. She didn't see the quiet devastation in my eyes. All she saw was her own carefully curated world, neatly divided between lies and truths she had woven together to keep me at arm's length. I could feel it all, the distance, the coldness in her gaze when she looked at me. It was like I wasn't even standing there anymore. I could feel the words burning in my throat, wanting to escape, but I couldn't bring myself to say them just yet. I wasn't ready for the fallout. But the truth was already there, staring at me from the small screen of her phone. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same one we'd shared countless meals over the years, and I couldn't help but think about all the times we had laughed together here, when life felt simple and uncomplicated. But it wasn't simple anymore. Nothing was uncomplicated. My hands clenched into fists as I took a seat across from her, still too stunned to speak. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer. My voice was quiet, but it shook with the weight of everything I was holding back. "Who's TJ?" I asked. It was the one question that had been clawing at my mind for days, and now it felt like the only thing that mattered. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, startled, but only for a second. Then she looked away quickly, a forced laugh escaping her lips. "Oh, just someone from work. You know how it is." Her words were too quick, too practiced. There was no hesitation, but I could see it in her eyes. The lie was obvious, and it made the air between us even colder. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence hang between us. She avoided my gaze, fiddling with her coffee mug, pretending like everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. I saw the messages, "Olivia," I said, my voice harder this time, no longer masking the hurt. I saw the text that said, "You're mine now." What did that mean? What was that all about? She stiffened. Her fingers stopped moving, and her shoulders tensed as though bracing for impact. Her face went pale, but she still wouldn't look at me. I don't know what you're talking about," she murmured, the words barely leaving her lips. But I heard the lie, loud and clear. I leaned forward, my hands now flat on the table, trying to steady myself. "Don't lie to me, Olivia," I said, the pain sharp in my voice. "I saw everything. I know what you're doing, and I can't pretend I didn't see it." The tears started to form in her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something real in her expression. She wasn't pretending anymore. But it wasn't regret. It wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear of getting caught. Fear of facing the consequences of everything she had done. "You're not supposed to know," she whispered, her voice cracking as she finally looked up at me, her gaze filled with panic. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Her words sounded like she was pleading, but there was something cold about it. The truth was finally coming out, but it was a truth I never thought I'd have to hear. "Then tell me everything," I demanded, my voice more forceful now. I needed to know. I had to know. Her lips trembled as she took a shaky breath. "TJ isn't just a colleague. He's someone I've been seeing for the past 6 months. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I'm sorry, but it was never supposed to get this far." The words hit me like a slap across the face. 6 months. 6 months of betrayal right under my nose, and I had no idea. I felt like my chest was being crushed, like the life was slowly draining out of me. Everything we had built, everything I thought we shared, now seemed like a carefully constructed lie. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely audible, the weight of the betrayal too much to process. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you end it if you knew it was wrong?" She looked away again, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I don't know. I got caught up in it. TJ made me feel alive again, like I was seen, like I mattered. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to stop." It felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling away. Everything she said, every word, tore apart the person I thought I knew. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I was too broken to express it. I just wanted to leave, to run away and escape the pain. But I couldn't. I had to know more. I needed to know how deep the lies went. "So what now, Olivia?" I asked, my voice quieter now, barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" She didn't answer me immediately. For the first time, I saw a flicker of real emotion in her eyes. Guilt, regret, and something else. But there was no answer. No way to fix the mess she had created. "I don't know," she finally said. "But I want to try. I want to fix this. If you'll let me." But I didn't know if I could let her. How could I ever trust her again? The room felt colder now. Olivia's apology hung in the air like a fragile thread that could snap at any moment. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just confessed. The words, "I want to fix this," echoed in my head, but it felt like a hollow promise, empty and unconvincing. Could she really fix this? Could she fix us? I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I had married, the woman I had shared my life with, wasn't the same person who had just confessed to betraying me for 6 months. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, the reality was undeniable. The trust was gone. And once it's gone, can you ever truly get it back? She reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered over the table, but I pulled back instinctively. I wasn't ready to accept her touch yet. The distance between us felt vast, like an unspoken canyon that had opened up the moment the truth came out. How could I touch her now without remembering the lies, the secrecy? How could I pretend that everything was okay? "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, my voice shaking with emotion. "I don't even know if I can look at you the same way anymore." Her face crumpled at my words, the mask of control slipping for a moment as she let the tears fall freely. She hadn't cried like this before, at least not in front of me. It was a raw, guttural emotion that I hadn't seen in years. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do to make it right." I stood up from the table, the tension in my muscles too much to bear. The weight of everything was suffocating me. My mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream at her, to tell her how deeply she had hurt me. The other part wanted to let her off the hook, to forgive her, to pretend like none of this had ever happened. But I couldn't. I couldn't pretend. "I need space, Olivia," I said, the words barely escaping my lips. "I need time to think. I can't make any decisions right now." She nodded, her face crumbling even more, but she didn't argue. She didn't beg me to stay. She just sat there, silent, tears slipping down her cheeks as she watched me walk away. I couldn't look at her anymore. The pain was too much, too fresh. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind running over every moment of our relationship. Every promise we made, every shared laugh, every touch, every kiss. And then I thought about TJ, the name that had burned into my memory the moment I saw it on her phone. I couldn't shake the image of her with him, of her holding him the way she used to hold me. How long had it been going on? How long had she been slipping away from me? I got up in the middle of the night and grabbed my jacket, slipping out of the apartment. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I needed to get out of there. I needed to clear my head, to breathe in the cold night air and pretend that none of this was real. But deep down, I knew it was. I wandered the streets for hours, my mind spinning. I didn't want to go back to the apartment. I couldn't face her right now. I didn't know if I ever would again. The person I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with everything, was gone. And in her place was a stranger, someone who had hidden the truth from me for months. Eventually, I ended up at the old park near our apartment. It was the same place where we had walked when we were younger, where we'd spent so many afternoons talking about our future. It felt like a lifetime ago. The park was empty, the swings creaking in the wind as I sat down on the cold metal bench. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to hold on to something, anything that felt like the man I used to be before everything came crashing down. And that's when it hit me. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't pretend like it didn't matter. I wasn't going to just sit by and let her tear apart everything we had worked for. But what did that mean for us? Was it even worth trying to fix it? Could I ever look at her without seeing the lies? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was done being the victim in this story. I was done being the guy who stood by, waiting for someone else to decide my fate. I had to take control. I had to decide what came next. Not her, not TJ, but me. By the time I got back to the apartment, The sun was starting to rise. I hadn't figured everything out, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let this betrayal destroy me. I walked inside, my heart heavy, but my mind more certain than ever. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I woke up the next morning, a strange mix of numbness and determination swirling inside me. The events of the night before felt like a bad dream, but the raw, sharp reality of it all was still there. I had tried to distance myself from Olivia, from the mess she had created, but I couldn't escape the weight of it. It was suffocating, the betrayal still fresh in my mind, gnawing at me with every passing second. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. Should I confront her again? Should I tell her to leave? Should I forgive her, as she so desperately wanted? I couldn't make sense of it. My mind kept replaying the moments from the night before, the pain in her eyes as she begged for another chance. But how could I give her that chance? How could I ever look at her the same way again? By the time the afternoon rolled around, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to talk to her. I had to face her and make a decision, because the longer I put it off, the more I felt like I was just sinking deeper into the confusion and hurt. I found her sitting on the couch, her knees drawn up to her chest as she stared blankly at the wall. Her phone was still next to her, buzzing occasionally with messages she didn't respond to. It was like she was waiting for something, but I wasn't sure what. When I walked into the room, she didn't even look up. There was an eerie calmness about her, like she had already accepted the inevitable. She knew what I was about to say. "I don't know how to do this," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "I don't know how to move forward from this. But I need you to be honest with me. No more lies, no more hiding. I need the truth." She finally looked up at me, her face pale and tired, her eyes red from the sleepless night. She was trying so hard to appear calm, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the edge of the couch. "I've already told you everything," she whispered, the words heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry, I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you." Her voice cracked at the end, and for a split second, I almost felt like I could forgive her. But then I remembered everything. The texts, the lies, the months of betrayal that she had hidden so well. No, this wasn't just something I could sweep under the rug. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not just about the affair, Olivia. It's about everything else. About how you've shut me out. How you've been so distant. You've been pushing me away for months, and I didn't even see it." She stared at me, her expression unreadable, and for a long moment, there was only silence between us. I could feel the weight of her words from last night hanging in the air. "I didn't know how to stop. I don't know what you want from me anymore," she said softly, her voice tinged with defeat. "I know I've hurt you, but I can't undo it. I can't go back and change what happened." I was standing there, caught between the man I was and the man I didn't want to become. The anger and hurt inside me surged, but so did the part of me that still loved her. The part of me that didn't want to let go. "You don't have to change what happened," I said, pacing slowly. "But you have to understand that I can't just forget about it. I can't pretend that this never happened. You can't expect me to go back to being the way I was before." She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand. I know I've broken something that can't be fixed so easily, but I want to try. I want to make it right. Please, just give me a chance." Her plea hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. I could feel her desperation, her desire to fix everything. But something inside me told me I couldn't let it go that easily. This wasn't something that could just be fixed with a few words, a few tears. This was a crack in our foundation, and I wasn't sure if we could rebuild from it. "I don't know if I can do that, Olivia," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know if I can trust you again. You've changed everything." She stood up then, her face crumpling as she took a few shaky steps toward me. She reached out, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't, but I didn't pull her in either. I just stood there, my hands at my sides, feeling lost. "I can't promise you everything will be okay," she whispered, her face inches from mine. "But I can promise you that I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Please, don't walk away from me." Her words felt like a plea, a desperate cry for something she knew she couldn't get back. But could I give it to her? Could I really walk back into the life we had before and pretend nothing had happened? Could I wipe away all the doubts, the insecurities, the betrayal, and start fresh? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to pull her into my arms and tell her that everything would be fine. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could. I don't know, I whispered back. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way. And just like that, I realized neither of us were the same anymore. We weren't the people we had been when we first fell in love. And no matter how hard we tried, things would never go back to the way they were. I turned and walked out of the room without saying another word. The days that followed felt like I was drifting in a fog. I kept telling myself I needed to make a decision, whether I was going to try and salvage our relationship or if I was going to walk away for good. But no matter how many times I went over it in my head, I kept coming back to the same question. How could I ever trust her again? Olivia's attempts to fix things were relentless. She apologized more times than I could count, always with that same desperate look in her eyes. She begged for another chance, promised she would change, that she would do whatever it took. But her words were starting to lose meaning. They felt rehearsed, like she was trying to sell me a story that didn't make sense anymore. She was hurting, I could see that, but I couldn't stop wondering how long she'd been living this double life, how long she had kept me in the dark. There were nights when I found myself staring at the ceiling, hearing her soft, uneven breathing next to me, and I couldn't decide what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that she was still lying beside me like nothing had happened. It was like I was lying in a bed of lies, trying to sleep through the storm that was raging inside me. I found myself retreating more and more into silence. I would go to work, come home, and retreat to my corner of the apartment. Olivia would try to engage me, ask me how my day went, but I couldn't even bring myself to look at her the same way anymore. Every time I saw her, I saw T.J. in the background of my mind. His face was there, a constant reminder that the woman I loved had given herself to someone else, that she had trusted him with things that should have been mine. It wasn't just the affair that bothered me, it was everything else. The hidden messages, the lies, the way she had shut me out without me even noticing. I kept asking myself how I could ever trust someone who had been able to hide something so big from me for so long. How could I ever be the same person in this relationship when it felt like everything had been built on a foundation of deceit? I couldn't talk to anyone about it. How could I? Who could I turn to? I wasn't the type of person to ask for help. I didn't have the luxury of talking about my feelings. I was supposed to be the strong one, the one who held it together. But now, all I felt was broken. Olivia could sense the distance, of course. She could feel me pulling away, and the more I pulled away, the harder she tried to hold on. She would call me at work, text me multiple times a day, asking if I was okay. Her messages were full of regret, but the more she begged, the more I felt suffocated. One evening, about a week after everything had come out, she did something that completely threw me off. I had just returned home from work, mentally exhausted, when I opened the door to find the apartment different. The lights were dimmed, soft music played in the background, and the smell of her favorite dinner filled the air. She was standing in the kitchen, her back to me as she stirred something in a pot. "Olivia?" I asked, stepping inside, unsure of what I was walking into. The air felt heavy, like she was trying to create the illusion of normalcy, like we were pretending this whole mess never happened. She turned around, her face a mixture of hope and fear. "I made your favorite. I thought maybe we could have a nice night together. Just the two of us." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to sit down and eat, to pretend like nothing was wrong, to give in to the comfortable familiarity of it all. But another part of me recoiled at the thought. How could I sit there and eat a meal with her when all I could think about was how she had shattered everything we had built? "I don't know if I can do this, Olivia," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, considering the storm inside me. "I don't know if I can sit here and pretend like things are normal, like nothing has changed. You've hurt me in ways I don't even know how to describe." Her face fell. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I know I've messed up. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please, don't give up on me." The pleading look in her eyes made my chest tighten, but I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that told me this was all just another attempt to fix something that couldn't be fixed. How could I trust her again? How could I believe that she was truly sorry when she had hidden something so important from me for so long? I turned away from her, the decision weighing heavily on my mind. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore," I said, feeling the tears threatening to spill. I'm not the same person I was when I married you, and I don't know if I can go back to being that person. She reached for me then, but I stepped back. I needed space. I needed time. Time to think, time to process, time to decide what I was going to do next. This wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about healing, healing that I didn't know was even possible. I'm sorry, she said again, her voice breaking. But I didn't say anything in response. I just walked past her, out of the kitchen, and into the bedroom. I needed to be alone. I needed to think about what I wanted for the first time in a long time. And as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. I didn't have to make a decision right then. I didn't have to decide if I was going to forgive her or leave her forever. I needed to give myself the time to process everything, to understand if this relationship was worth saving, or if I was just holding on to something that had already died. The choice was mine to make. And no matter what happened, I was going to take control of my life again. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a haze. The apartment was quieter than ever, the air thick with tension. I spent most of my time at work, burying myself in tasks that didn't matter, trying to avoid coming home. When I did, I'd find Olivia sitting in the same spot, waiting for me, like a puppy who had been left alone for too long. She looked at me with those eyes full of hope and desperation, and I could feel the weight of her expectations pressing down on me. It was suffocating, but it wasn't just her. It was me too. The longer I stayed in this limbo, the more I could feel myself breaking down. The guilt gnawed at me every time I looked at her. The thought of leaving her haunted me, but so did the thought of staying. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever see her the same way again? That was the question. Could I move past this betrayal? Could I rebuild what we had? Or was it better to walk away and start over? One night, after a long day at work, I came home later than usual. The apartment was dark, save for the soft light coming from the kitchen. Olivia was standing there, her back to me, a glass of wine in hand. She didn't hear me come in at first, and for a moment, I just watched her. Her shoulders were slumped, her face pale and tired, like she hadn't slept in days. "Hey," I said softly, and she immediately turned around. Her face brightened for a split second, but then the smile faded as she saw the look in my eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I didn't know how to answer her. Was I okay? I didn't think I had been okay for weeks. But there was something in her eyes that made me pause. She looked genuinely worried. For a moment, I almost felt guilty for being angry at her, for pushing her away. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with this." She set the glass of wine down, and I could see the way her hands shook. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was selfish. I was weak. I don't know how to make it up to you, but I'll do whatever it takes." The words were familiar, so familiar, but this time, I didn't know if they had any meaning. The words alone weren't enough to fix this. I didn't know if anything could fix this. I walked toward the kitchen counter, leaning against it for support, trying to hold myself together. I couldn't look at her right now. "I don't know if I can do this," I muttered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I don't know if I can look at you and pretend nothing happened." She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, watching me, her face contorted with emotion. "I understand," she said finally, her voice cracking. "You don't have to forgive me right away. I don't expect you to. But please, please don't give up on us. I know I messed up, but I love you. I'll fight for you. I'll fight for us." The sincerity in her voice almost broke me. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the pain she was feeling, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the love I used to have for her. But then, just as quickly, it was replaced with the cold, hard truth. She had betrayed me. She had lied to me, kept secrets from me, and given herself to someone else. I wasn't sure how to move past that. I walked into the living room, pacing in a circle as my mind raced. I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for me to say something, to make a decision. But how could I make a decision when I didn't even know who I was anymore? The person I had been, the person who had trusted her, loved her, was fading, and I didn't know if I could ever get that person back. The silence stretched between us, suffocating. Olivia had said everything she could say, and now it was up to me. But I didn't have the answers. "I need to think," I said quietly, sitting down on the couch. "I need time." She didn't say anything. She just nodded, wiping away a tear before turning away from me. I watched her leave the room, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of what was happening. This wasn't just a bump in the road. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple apology. The foundation of everything I thought I knew had been cracked open, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. The next morning, I woke up early, the weight of everything still heavy on my chest. I needed to get out of the apartment to clear my head. I grabbed my coat, walked out the door, and into the crisp morning air. The streets were quiet, the city still asleep, and for a moment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. I walked for hours, not really thinking, just trying to put some distance between myself and the mess that was my life. But the farther I walked, the clearer things became. I couldn't live in limbo forever. I couldn't keep running from the decision I had to make. I had to face it. I had to face her. And I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be moving forward. When I returned to the apartment, Olivia was waiting for me. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, her eyes filled with hope. "I've thought about it," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "And I've made my decision." She nodded, taking a step toward me. "What is it?" I paused for a moment, looking at her, trying to find the words. The decision wasn't easy, but it was the only one that made sense. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "But I'm willing to try. We can work through this, but it's going to take time. And it's going to take trust. I can't promise it'll be easy. I don't know if we'll make it. But I'm willing to try. If you are." She looked at me, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion, and nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said quietly. And in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us. A chance to rebuild, not what we had before, but something new, something better. But only time would tell if that was possible. It's strange how life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. After everything, after the lies, the heartache, the moments of almost walking away, we both found ourselves standing at the edge of something new. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I first married Olivia. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd hoped for. But it was ours, and we were choosing to fight for it. The days after I made my decision were filled with small steps. There were moments where the tension between us would return, where we'd stumble over old wounds. But there were also moments of clarity, where I saw the woman I fell in love with, where I felt the connection we had lost slowly starting to rebuild. The path to healing wasn't linear. It wasn't easy, but we were moving forward. I began to realize something that I hadn't considered before. Forgiveness wasn't about pretending nothing had happened. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about acknowledging the pain, owning the mistakes, and choosing to build something stronger in the wake of it. It was about learning from the hurt, not letting it define us. Olivia worked harder than I ever thought she could. She didn't just apologize, she proved it day by day. Every morning, she would leave me a note, something simple but sincere, telling me she loved me. Every evening, we would sit down together, not with forced smiles, but with genuine conversation, talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't perfect. There were times when I questioned myself, when I wondered if I was making a mistake, if I was holding on to something that wasn't meant to be. But every time I saw her trying, every time she showed me that she was committed to being a better person, I knew that we were on the right path. A few months later, Olivia and I found ourselves sitting at the same dinner table we had shared so many times before. This time, the air between us was different. There was no tension, no unfinished conversations lingering. It was just the two of us, enjoying a quiet evening together. "I don't know what the future holds," Olivia said softly, looking across the table at me. "But I know that I want to spend it with you. I want to keep trying, every day, to be the person you deserve." I smiled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I don't know what the future holds either," I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand. "But I know I'm willing to face it with you. We've been through the worst of it, and we're still here. That says something." Her eyes softened, a small tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't deserve you," she whispered, but I shook my head gently. "Maybe," I said with a small smile, "but we'll get there." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we had a chance. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges ahead, and there would be moments where I would doubt whether I could ever fully forget the pain. But I had something now that I hadn't had in a long time. Hope. Hope that we could rebuild, that we could learn from our mistakes, and that we could create something new together. As we finished our dinner, The last of the tension between us seemed to melt away. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. We were going to make it. Together. And in the end, that's all that mattered.